Welcome, everybody, to the Leader's Guide to Prioritizing Your Soul. Now, if you've been with us before, you know that this is the final third part of a three-part series. We started with the mind, and then we talked about the body. Today, we're ending with the soul. When I was working with my marketing agency, I was really trying to decide if we talk about the soul, because this is not a topic that's common in the corporate space. As we reflected on it more, I realized that I couldn't not include the soul. Connecting to my soul was such an important part of my journey, the journey I've seen my clients go on as they've determined where they want to go in their career and how to show up differently as leaders. So today is a real treat. We're going to talk to you all about the soul, why it's important, how to prioritize it, how to get in touch with it, and how to fit it in your busy day. I'm very honored to have a very special guest join me today, Georgia Lacroix. The two of us are going to be talking to you today all about the soul. And let me tell you a little bit about Georgia, and why I couldn't do a topic about the soul without her. She is an empowerment alignment coach, an energy healing facilitator. She combines coaching with integrative healing skills to offer her clients and students avenues through which they become empowered, come into awareness of their wholeness, and move forward to experience practical, full, productive, creative, and joy-filled lives. She is multi-talented in what she brings to the table. She teaches Reiki, integrated energy therapy, facilitates workshops designed to help individuals break through their blocks and move forward. She's also a board-certified massage therapist, Reiki master and teacher, an IET master instructor, certified hypnotherapist, certified Mari practitioner, and a practitioner in several other modalities. Georgia, you are a woman of many talents. 25 years of extensive study and experience in the field of bodywork, energy, healing, and coaching. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy, and to all of you, all of your listeners. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm a perpetual student. So that's why all of those things, I can't help myself. Just got to keep learning more and more and more.
I hear you. I have trouble staying focused on all the things that I need to do when I keep getting called to learn new things. And that's part of the fun.
It is, absolutely.
So we have a number of questions we're going to talk about today, but I'll tell you what, for everybody who's tuning in and listening, there are times when we're going to go off script, and that's going to be an important part of today. I also want to hear from you all. So as you tune in and listen to us talking about how to prioritize the soul as a busy leader, what are some things that you want to know about? So Georgia, as we kicked off in brainstorming how to bring this topic to our corporate leaders, one of the things that you and I talked about is we probably need to start with defining the soul and what it means. This very sometimes ambiguous, can be difficult to understand topic, but so easy to understand and access at its core. And we're going to get into that. But just to ground everybody, how would you define the word soul?
Oh, start out with the tough ones. Because I think one of the wonderfulnesses of the word and concept of soul is that it doesn't have a definition. It doesn't have a finite definition, and as we know, it can be understood in the realm of religion, of spirituality, and actual practical application. And so it might even be a little bit of a loaded word for a lot of people. Every time I think about the word, it comes out differently. What feels to me is like soul is almost like the glue, the essence that's in between everything within all the space, holding things together.
Mm.
And we are so used to looking at what seems to be tangible that we're missing the space or the that glue that holds it all together. And somehow we just think, oh, it all these tangible things are there and are important, and we don't give a whole lot of thought to the glue that
Mm.
holds it together. Um, I think about soul the way we use it in our language. Soul music has soul,
Mhm.
soul food.
Mhm.
I'll be dating myself when I say soul train. um, there's an essence. It's an essence. And the way I look at it, it's something that's beyond us, not unattainable, but beyond the physical.
Mhm.
And it can be tapped into, but it's not tangible. And it comes through as ahas and excitement and tingles and, ooh, I've got it, or that heartfelt feeling.
Mm.
Heart and soul so often go together. Or
Mhm.
the words we use, that touches me to my soul.
Yes. Yes.
So
So much of what you said is resonating. Uh, the fact that this word is something you can't touch, it's not tangible. We spend so many of our lives um, in the corporate space pursuing the tangible, the deadlines, answering the emails, going to the
mhm.
meetings, preparing for the board meetings. And this is an intangible that actually, if you get this right, and if you connect to the soul, all the tangible things start to have more purpose.
Have more meaning, yes. Yeah, it brings that essence to everything that we do. And I think we could go through our whole lives without dipping into it, but man, would we be missing something.
Oh, I was just thinking about that as I was reflecting on this talk. And the image I had in my head as I thought about living your life when you're connected to your soul versus not, it's almost like living in black and white where it's so, if you don't know there's a color out there, you're fine, it's good, everything's great, I can see. But then once you access your soul and you open up that part of you, now you're stepping into Oz, you're living in Technicolor.
Beautiful. And wasn't there a show, and I'm sure those who are tuning in know right away what I'm talking about. There was a show where half of it was in black and white, and they recognize, oh my gosh, there's color, and it brings so much depth
Oh,
and
yes. Yes.
enrichment to their lives. It also brings complications because
Mm.
it's not simple black and white anymore. So I think
Mm.
a lot of times we avoid that essence because we think it might complicate things. And quite the opposite, it will enrich everything we do, not just in the corporate world, although thank heavens we're talking to that audience right now.
Mhm.
Because I'm guessing maybe that's where it might be less expected to be
Mhm.
found, but it touches everything. So anybody who's in the corporate world, they also have lives. I mean, lives beyond what they're doing for quote work. And yeah, once we can dip into that essence, wow, color, I love it, Technicolor.
Mm. Technicolor and also complication. Mm.
Mhm, mhm.
So we've touched on this a little bit, but the conversations about the soul. If we had this dialogue 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, people might think, well, that's just hippie stuff. I'm not gonna tune into that. That's an obtuse topic, but it's not relatable to what I'm doing today. Now we've seen that mindset shift even over the last 10 years. But to really drive this home, why is this important for people who are in leadership positions, running companies? making decisions that impact teams, focused on driving revenue every day. Why is the topic of prioritizing the soul important for people in leadership positions?
A counter question wants to be why is it not important? Um, I'm going to guess that people in their jobs get to a point where they wonder what is this all for? What is this all about? Is it just so that I can have make my money so that I can have my living? Huge and important part. But if we look at the bigger picture, we're all doing this to expand and better the world. And doing all of that with cut and dried black and white, without the color, without the essence, without the compassion, without the soul. I think, well, I guess we could ask your viewers, how do they feel? Is there burnout? Is there depression? Is there a feeling of what am I doing? Spinning my wheels? Those are things that show up. Something's missing. And sorry, I want to say you touched on so many of the things that lead up to soul in your part 1 and part 2. All of those are really, I don't know that this is a separate subject, actually. We're parsing it out because we have vocabulary and it kind of makes sense. But all the things that you talked about in your other 2 are all part of that soul. You're asking people to stop and tend to their bodies, to their thoughts. All of that, those are stepping stones to coming into accessing soul.
Yes, well said. I see soul as kind of the foundation as we talk about. It's pretty common and understood and even embraced in the corporate space that yes, you need to take time to recharge. You need to introduce practices that will keep you sharp and enable you to focus on strategy and not just implementation. And there's also been a lot of conversations around stay physically fit, stay active. Those health benefits are obvious, and corporations even put money behind that, offering gym memberships. The soul is, the way that I see it, and the way that it's come into my life and my client's life, is it's the foundation that we lay that enables us to recognize the importance of taking care of our mind and taking care of our body. When I work with clients who come to me I'll tell you, if people are wondering, how do I know if I'm connected to my soul or not? The way you can recognize if you're not, this will show up, as Georgia alluded to, it can show up as burnout. It can show up as not feeling like there's any purpose or meaning in your life anymore. My day is filled with back to back obligations or things that I have to do. And I don't enjoy it anymore. So these are all clues that can really show up to indicate, hey, you might have lost touch with your soul, the needs of your soul. Now, hopefully that gives people context as to how to recognize it. And by the way, you asked a really good question. Everyone who's tuning in, if you could type in the comments how you know when you're connected to your soul, or how you know that you're not, we'd be really interested to hear from you all too. Go ahead, Georgia.
Well, I like your idea of that the soul is really the foundation, and interestingly that we would be talking about this on the 3rd step or the 3rd portion, because I think it's both the foundation and what we're striving for. It's laced through the whole pyramid. And we often don't get the idea, or maybe even the luxury, to think about soul until we've taken care of some of those other levels. And then if we can create the space for that, for accessing into that essence that we're talking about, it can then come down and permeate from the bottom up and be part of the foundation. So it, like I said, it's the glue. It's everywhere. It's
Mm.
it seeps from the down, from top down, and then from the bottom up. Really kind of fascinating stuff.
It is. It is. And this is an interesting question. Yeah, we've alluded to this, but I wanted to give you all some specific examples. What are common pitfalls for people who are not tuning into their soul?
What are you're asking me this, or
I'm gonna throw it out, but if you want me to share some things that I've seen with my clients, and actually also a personal story, I can start and give you a minute to think.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I've seen happen when corporate leaders are, and I'm using the word corporate leaders because that's who I work with, but it's people, when people aren't connected to their soul. Uh, Earlier this year, I had a very senior leader at a large tech company um, hire me, and he had been very successful in tech. He made all the money, got all the stock, got the big, Silicon Valley house, all the things. And he was miserable. So I ask everybody when I start a coaching engagement, how fulfilled are you on a level 1 to 10, both in life and in work? And just to give you some context, he was about at a 1 and a 2, which was the lowest I'd seen.
Mhm.
So to me, that said, there's some major shifts that need to happen here. What we uncovered is that he just knew that his life's work was meant to be helping people through the arts. So he'd been in this space where he was creating tech software that helped people get things done, be productive. And that felt so meaningless for him. Where he really was drawn to make an impact was in um, helping people connect through the arts, whether that be music, art. He wasn't quite clear on what that looked like, but he knew that's where it was. However, every time he started to explore that, he fell into this trap of, but I'm not going to make as much money, and my family relies on me for money and freedom and stability. All valid points, right? The
Mhm.
soul wanted something. His obligation as a father and as a husband was taking him a different way. So he was very torn. So for him, it was really trying to unravel this existential question. Do I follow what my soul wants? Or do I remain loyal to the role that I think that I need to have as a father and as a husband to continue to provide for my family, the stability, the security, even at the um, sacrifice of my own happiness. And he's um, he's still grappling with this question. So this is one way that I've seen this question of the soul really haunt somebody in
Oh,
a
yeah.
leadership position.
Yeah, I can hear that, and I understand completely the conflict between what we've been told, how we've been growing up, and how our world is set up. There's no question that our world runs on specifics like money, and then we acquire things that then require more money to do that, and we get ourselves into a no-win situation. And then comes that soul, that hunger. So first of all, he's recognizing that feeling, that longing. So there's something to recognize, that when there's a longing, that's your soul speaking.
Yes.
I don't have an answer. I do feel I know that when that longing comes through, it's your soul, and it will not lead you astray.
Mm. Mm.
Now,
I just so wanted accentuate what you just said, because we're having now a lot of comments from the audience saying, yes, okay, I can understand that this notion of golden handcuffs is so prominent in the corporate space. I want to do something else. I'm being drawn to something else. To your point, this longing, that's your soul, but it's so hard to get away from the material safety and security that does satisfy important values in our life. So let's play this out, Georgia. Let's say that longing is there and you continue to ignore it, and for very good reasons. What happens over time?
Just some of the words that we've already put out there: burnout, despondency, maybe going into a deep hole, deep depression. And I don't want to make it sound so dark, and yet I know there are people who absolutely feel that. Because we've put ourselves into a position, and this is without judgment, it's the way the world works. We've put ourselves into a position. We have a family. We have obligations that we need this energy called money to support. The longing of the soul is so incredibly important. I would recommend strongly finding a way to bring it in. It may not be the way that you earn your living right now. We certainly have heard stories of people who have totally gone away from the corporate world and now are living their soul's desire. That's few and far between. It's very inspirational. It's wonderful to see, and I hope it gives hope to people that there is that possibility, and the work that it would take to get back up near the place where they are right now in their jobs. It might take a couple lifetimes to get through that. So finding a way to bring that in, whether it be through a club or here's creating space for that. So it might not be how you earn your living, but it might at least give yourself that space to experience it or to explore it, to take a class. And I can already hear that, well, I don't have time for the class. And I'm going to say something that's maybe a little controversial. We don't have time not to.
Yes.
Because that ignoring it, when it comes, I don't want to sound dire here. I really don't, because I'm like all about lifting up. But when we get the time to do that is when our bodies and minds give out. A huge illness, an accident of some kind, and all of a sudden, everybody's all about, take your time. Take your time to tune in and do whatever you need to do to come on back. But we are not encouraged to do that
unless we have a catastrophic event that forces us to. Yes. And we've had someone, AJ has tuned in and said, one may risk losing their sense of identity and purpose. So powerful. So as a corporate leader, once you lose your sense of identity and purpose, it is really hard to continue to show up in a way that people need you in a leadership role, engaged, optimistic, problem solving, strategic. When you lose that connection, it's almost like cutting a cord. And if you continue to go along with this angst, with this uncomfortable feeling, this knowing that you've lost that connection, it is eventually going to catch up with you. Now, George is right that it can be a catastrophic event. It's certainly, we've seen people get sick. That's kind of a slower blip. That's a warning sign. You need to tune into this. You need to pay attention to this. And then I've seen it on the other end where people start to have serious health conditions. So this is eventually going to show up and get in your way at some point. Um, so I think, do you have something to add to that,
Well,
Georgia?
keep going. Yeah, no.
So I think people are really resonating with, hey, I've seen it. I know what it looks like. Perhaps you've sensed it before. So real question now is how do people tune into what their soul wants and needs? And you started to mention this before, so I don't want to lose that. Is it this doesn't always mean that you need to completely flip your life upside
Right.
down and ignore all the other needs in your life. There are creative ways to connect with your soul if you decide you want to do it outside of work. It also doesn't mean that you need to leave the corporate space and do something entirely different. I've seen lots and lots and lots of clients just make a couple of small changes that better aligned them with the needs of their soul. And it was something they just didn't, it was just such a small yet instrumental change that really changed everything for them. But I think the real first step to this, and Georgia, tell me if this is what you see with your clients too, is first this recognition and acknowledgement of what your soul does need and want.
It's the way our inner interesting soul kind of has this idea of something that's beyond us, but it's in us. It's all through us. When it begins to show itself through that longing or that itching or that desire, it doesn't do that to bug us.
Mm.
It doesn't do it to throw us um, under the bus. It does it because, you know what? It's like a plant coming up through the cracks. It has to express.
Yes, I love that. And when you're able to create the conditions, create the space to let this plant grow, even if it doesn't look like the life that you have today, and all those fears about, but the money, the security, the stability, when people are able to just give space to that growth, what do you see happen?
A smile comes to my face. Just the blooming of our essence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've. I mean, I'm okay. I don't. I cannot put myself in the position of a corporate leader. Haven't been there. Haven't done that. I do feel that because of the things that we've put into place and the expectations that have been created because of that, and we think, okay, now we have to meet those expectations, and then there are more, and it just builds. We're creating something that doesn't quite exist. And I want to say that there is always, always a way to back up a little bit. And it's really more in our minds that we have to show up a certain way. That's
Mm-hmm.
something we made up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So while still meeting our most of our obligations, there is space in there. And I'm gonna suggest that sometimes we squeeze it out on purpose because I don't I, when this longing comes up, it's going to mess with me, is what we think. So let me just push it back
Ah,
and
yes.
fill in with all these other obligations that we then create for ourselves. So I'd like to ask a really honest question to look and say, what are true obligations and what are ones that we've filled in? I do it all the time. I make myself busy
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
things that, oh, when there's a little space, oh, there's an opportunity to volunteer. Who says?
Yes, I love that we're talking about this, because in this context of what do I prioritize, there are so many things. And when there's a gap, we're so used to filling it with to-dos and activities and obligations and phone calls and people and connection. But to really understand how to best prioritize, sometimes you got not sometimes it is imperative to slow down and step back and look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture meaning What are you trying to, and I'll talk about this both from a strategic standpoint on a corporate side, and then also from the soul standpoint. What do I need to achieve as a leader? What are the goals we're trying to hit as a company? Am I spending the time in the right way? And I am a person at the core. I need to make sure that I'm appropriately nourishing myself so I can do all the things my company is requiring of me. Am I filling my time with the things that are purposeful, with the with practices and um, traditions, I'll say that honor who I am and what my soul needs. And in this world where we're just go, 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 go all the time, checking things off the to-do list, not taking time to step back and think and I'll call it meditate on that, think about it, just be, that is where we lose the connection and the purpose. And then that is ultimately is going to prevent us from being the strong leader and getting all the things done that we need to do.
Yes, and there's so many places that I feel like I'd love to jump in and all that you said. First of all, I'm so glad you exist because part of your job, I'm going to guess, is helping someone recognize what are those absolute musts and what really is stuff that are fillers. Part of it you mentioned in some of the other two segments about what do we do when there's a little bit of extra free time? We pick up that phone and we look and we almost ask those electronics and ask those other things to fill up our space so that we don't have to look at these longings or these creative spaces. And I'm speaking to myself as well as anybody else. I recognize how seductive that is. And to quote Marianne Williamson, who says, it's not our inadequacies that we're afraid of, it's our awesomeness that we're afraid of. And that awesomeness comes through the soul is what brings us our awesomeness. And we're not quite sure what that might look like. And maybe I can't live up to it. So let me just fill those gaps so that we really have to look at it. But it will come through in dissatisfaction, in wondering whether, what is this all for? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? I'm pretty sure the meaning of life is not becoming the head of a company. I don't know that that's the meaning of life. It is an avenue. It is a vehicle.
So yes, so where I see people who let their soul guide them to that type of a destination is I want to help clean up the environment. So I'm going to become CEO of an environmental company, or I want to provide universal healthcare to all. So I am going to become CEO of an insurance company, for example. So that is where how our soul and our life's purpose, and I know we're kind of talking about these in an intertwined way, your soul can help you understand what your life's purpose is. Then you start to make decisions based on that, and the openness and the power and the alignment that comes from that type of a direction is super powerful. And when you get into this space where you're just so bogged down and you're so tired and you're so overwhelmed, remembering why you're doing this and connecting it to that purpose, if you've been able to answer those questions and get on that path, that's going to make it all worthwhile. And to your point, Georgia, clarify what you need to do and what you don't need to do.
Right. And then when you have that extra space, like, let's say you are done paying off a certain loan and you now have $200 a month, rather than taking that money and just spending it again, how about saving it? So this is the same thing as this space. When it happens, how about not just throwing it back into the pot, but creating it, go, oh, here's a breathing space. And I want to come into that about breathing because it's going to be, in my view, the very simplest
Mhm.
way of tuning into that longing. Um, and I just want to come back to what you said. I'm going to come back to the breath here, but go back to what you said about if you want to clean up the environment, and then that's your way of doing it. Part of the issue is we haven't let our children at a young age step into their longing. How many stories do we hear about, the kid that wants to be an artist and that
Mhm.
is just their soul's longing, but hey, parents tell you you can't earn a living like that.
Gotta
So
be a doctor, a lawyer, or a corporate executive. Those are
right,
your choices. Yes, I hear
right.
that again and
And
again.
then it gets squashed from the beginning. Not only talk about resentment that then comes up and
Mhm.
how that affects and poisons relationships. Uh, so,
Mm.
and I understand, yeah, not every artist can be, support a family like that. However, can we, with our children, encourage what their soul's longing is and show them how it can possibly be put together with other things, um, and let them have that space to
Yes,
express in that way. But
yes.
it's never too late.
I
Okay. So
love that. Mhm.
here we're
Yes,
now 30, 40, 50, 60, and we think, oh, that ship has sailed. I don't believe it.
I totally agree, Georgia, and I mean, I'll point to my own story. I knew I went through, and by the way, oftentimes you figure out what you're meant to do through some kind of a crisis in your life. It's
Mhm.
really interesting how that works, how your priorities just get really clear. I went through something in college that gave me that insight, and as painful as it was a true gift. I knew that I wanted to somehow get into psychology space, working with people. I was looking into industrial organizational psychology. I got pulled back to the business world. I talked to my trusted mentors who meant all the right things. My dad, um, he knew the corporate world, and so he really encouraged me to go that direction, and I did. And again and again and again, it just felt the longing was always there, and I just couldn't fully show up the way that I wanted to, not until I found this coaching path, and it was like so many doors opened for me once I was able to do that. I see that with my clients too, again and again. Once they are able to recognize, acknowledge, and embrace their calling, their soul's wish and want and need, uh, they didn't necessarily see it before, but as they go on this journey and doors start opening as they allow them to, they are actually able to get all the things they want in that end their life by following their soul's calling. So you're right, Georgia. Never too late. It's never too late. And it's just so magical and powerful what it unlocks when people do open themselves to that.
Right.
So loved what you said before. Hey, I think we're getting a lot of people who are resonating to this, um, resonating with this topic and are perhaps recognizing it. So, how do people connect to what their soul wants or needs?
Whew.
Yeah.
That's about as deep and complicated as what's the meaning of life.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's an answer. However, I do believe there are some avenues. And luckily, we have built into us the most basic avenue possible. And it's probably something we don't give much thought to at all, unless we're having trouble with it. And that is our breath. We're breathing. We're talking here. We're sitting here. We all know we're breathing. Probably not breathing wonderfully well, unless we know something about breath and how to breathe properly. But we all have it, and it's so basic that it is totally ignored.
Mhm.
In my opinion, it is the first step in responding to our longing,
Mhm.
to our purpose, to our soul. And I know that the people who are tuning in here, I mean, their lives are full to the brim. And it's like, how can I have one more second? I'm going to guess we have a minute. I'm going to guess everybody, no matter, I don't care if you're the president of the United States, you have a minute to stop and notice the breath. There's a reason the breath, the part of the verbiage for breathing is inspiring. Inspiration is meaning breathing in. And the word inspire is that which brings us information, brings us ahas, brings us, oh, a breath. Sink into something. It's not going to be a magical thing at the beginning, but just giving your breath the time of day and honoring it, just it's like telling your breath, thank you for being here. And I would recommend two things. One is on a regular basis tuning in, and if you have to put a little ding 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 on your watch every hour to spend a minute, just close your eyes and notice your breath. Great. That's a wonderful start. You'd be amazed at how much you'll get that minute back in spades.
Yes.
I promise you will not lose a minute. You will gain 10.
Yes. And you will know what to focus on too, because you will have made that connection.
Come back fresh and renewed. And then the other time to use your breath consciously is in response to that longing. Let's say you're sitting there and you're going, what am I doing here? And you just have this feeling if you want to go to the beach or you want to something that just fills your soul, but makes you kind of depressed because you can't do it. Sit for a second. I'm going to say a minute, okay? 60 seconds. Honor it and let it know that you're listening.
Don't ignore it. Don't push through it. Give it a minute. Acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, because I think what's going to happen is that as you acknowledge it more and more, you're going to find avenues to let that out and to be expressed.
And to honor that need.
And you can't even conceive of how it's going to express. And that's where faith comes in, that just by stopping and honoring it and being with it, that something is going to open up. Whether it's, I can't even guess, but so many
times. I can't even either. Like it's so hard to describe. And
you'll know it when you see it.
You'll know it when you see it. And you're right on, Georgia. It's so easy. That breath is the instrument, and then inspiration is sort of the reward. But it's so true. And I see this, I've just have seen this so many different times, and it's unexplainable in earthly terms, but it's so powerful.
And well, it should be, because this is one of the reasons we're talking about it, because it's not a tangible. You can tell people how to organize their day. You can talk about finances and all that. All of that is tangible.
Yes,
this is not, and it's why it's avoided.
Yes, agreed. And I also find it is, if you start here instead of, okay, let's get you a new app for task prioritization, and let's get you a new way to organize your calendar. Those things are great and needed. If you answer some of these higher questions as to what's my purpose, what should I be spending my time on, oftentimes those other things kind of take care of themselves without the apps. So really great insight. And I know, Georgia, you are a master at this, and you have taught me so much. Could you take us through a breathing exercise that people could easily do with a short amount of time to experience this magic that we're talking about?
I'd be glad to. Can your viewers see the writing you have underneath us? The tab you have here. Let me just read it, because it's so beautiful. You came up with it, and it's just beautiful. Breath is the instrument through which we open to the soul, and inspiration is the way the soul shows itself to us. So if we take time with our breath and ride it and create the space for it, what will happen is inspiration.
And how important is that, like in general as a human, but as a corporate leader?
Oh, and what the burst of energy that comes when you have an aha, when you have that inspiration. You could feel like you need, 12 naps, but that inspiration hits and you've got all the juice you need to keep going.
That's right.
So, um, there, yeah, let's, what I'd like to suggest if you're listening and you're not driving, please, uh, if you are driving, save this for another time. But it's helpful. It's helpful for me to close my eyes because that keeps other distractions out. Um, to first notice your breath and notice it coming and going. And if that's all you do for 60 seconds is feeling your breath come in and noticing it going out, that means your body is filling up as you breathe in and contracting as you breathe out, just noticing it. It's like your body, your soul actually will start to listen and go, "Oh my gosh, he's listening. She's paying attention." So if that's all you do for 60 seconds, let it be enough. And truly, if you don't have 60 seconds, do it for 30 seconds. But I'll challenge you on that. I do believe you'll have 60 seconds. And you might notice that your breath changes and that you take an extra little bit deeper breath as you start paying attention. You're not trying to change your breath, you're just paying attention to it, listening like you're listening to somebody tell you something intimate and super interesting. What could be more interesting than your breath, really? If you don't have it for 60 seconds, that's all you will think about. You won't think about anything else but getting the breath back. So how about we think about it before something like that happens? So that's for you just to have the 60 seconds, but I'm going to go a little bit further very shortly. I'd like you to notice the transition between breathing in and breathing out. So when you breathe in, there's another mechanism that happens when you breathe out. And so there's that transition point. So just do a couple breaths and notice that there's a place where the breath changes from breathing in to breathing out and then to breathing in again. And while your body keeps on breathing, as it will, I'd like you to pay attention to the transition points and just be there waiting for the breath to come in and as it goes out, and then wait for it to go out and shifting to go in again. So it's like you're waiting on either end of your breath. The breath will happen. Notice the transition. And then see if you can space out that transition ever so slightly and create a little space, like a little pause. But it doesn't, you don't want to have to catch your breath again, ever so slightly so that you hardly notice, but giving it a little bit of space. And wait for that space to happen, and then let your breath go in the other direction. Space, other direction. And hang out in the space between your breaths. And in that space is really what defines your breath. Space is what defines everything around you. The reason you can see letters on a page is because there's space. Space is the essence of what creates what you feel that is tangible. So the space is vital. And space is where healing happens. Space is where inspiration comes in. Space is where knowing is. Ahas are. So hang out in the space. And you can get good enough at this to start breathing for 30 seconds, noticing your breath, and for 30 more seconds, hang out in the space. Inspiration, purpose, soul is not something that you go after. It's always there. You just have to open up to it. And your breath is the ideal, you were born with it. It's the ideal tool for accessing. There's more that can happen after these exercises, but this is the beginning. And if that's all that you do, I feel like this hour, this whatever time we've had here is going to be worth it. And you'll be doing all of us a favor. You'll be doing yourself first and foremost a favor. But if everybody tuned into the spaces and allowed for soul to come through, can you imagine the world we would have?
Oh, it'd be so much better. And it looks like I'm crying now because that was so moving. And that was wonderful. Thank you, Georgia. I have this awful cough that I'm getting over, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are going through the same thing right now. This was a great demonstration of, if you have a small amount of time, use it to connect with your breath, and allowing time and space for this. If you continuously do this, and I encourage you to just experiment, try this for a week. When you have a minute between meetings, try every day to try this breathing exercise. And you can even replay this video so Georgia can take you through this and see what a difference it makes for your clarity, for your fulfillment, for your ability to show up and be present for yourself and for others. So thank you, Georgia, so much for all your wisdom and sharing with us today. It's been an honor to have you.
The honor is mine. Thank you so much for asking. I'm thrilled to be here.
If any of you are watching and you want to really dive into what this looks like for you, I have been privileged enough to have Georgia join me for packages where we really work with corporate leaders and help them move through their daily priorities, get clear on what's really important. And through this, it's where we see the happiness, the impact, and the earning potential increase again and again and again. So if you're looking for a little bit of help with this, this is something you want to take a step further, here's where you can schedule, I'll call this a soul discovery session, because it's a special package where Georgia and I will together work with you. And the combination of the two of us in this holistic treatment that we put together is pretty powerful. I can't tell you how many of my corporate leaders, Georgia, have come and sang your praises. So this is support for you if you're looking for it. If this has been enough, then I'm so happy that you joined us today. You can find this replay both on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn. And then the other two priorities, both for the mind and the body, if you wanted to catch up on those as well. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Do something really soul satisfying and fun. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.